Okay. Now, let's just pick up in the midst of Shemin HaMishcha. There's a very interesting question, which is, excuse me the pun, asking to be asked. The Talmud clearly says, and that there's not going to be any other shemen except for the shemen of Moshe Rabbeinu, shemen HaMishcha, except for the shemen of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara Krisus, hey Amid Beis, v'chines echod nase b'shemen HaMishcha, v'lo nisim harbe nasu bo mitchilose v'atzeifoy, tchilose lo hoya ela yud beis leg. Uboy nimshach hamishkon v'kelov v'aron uvonov shivas yemei hamiluyim uboy nimshachu kohanim gdolim u'malachim v'kulo kayim lo osed lovoy. And the Rambam in Uchos Klei HaMikdash Perek Aleph Halacha Hey u'me'olam lo nase shemen acher chutz mima she'asa Moshe. And the Pirush Mishnah in Menachos in Perek Tes Mishnah Beis Lefi, I'm just skipping a little bit, Lefi shakol moedim she'ein oisin shemen hamishcha im ne'edar oisoi she'asa Moshe. So not only, even if it's lost, we know, for example, Lu Yitzur, the Aron would be lost. They talk about the Ramban. And if we Nishba or something like that, you make another Aron. But if the Shemen HaMishcha would be lost, Shein Oisin Shemen HaMishcha im ne'edar Oisa Shasa Moshe Kamoshe Bianu Kama Pomim. And that L'chor, one of them, is in Krisus and Pirush Mishnayis, Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph. So the question begs itself that if it was only Moshe Rabbeinu Shemen, and if the Shemen is lost, you don't make another one. So why is it mitzvah deres? It's a mitzvah of the Shah that Moshe Rabbeinu should make a Shemen HaMishcha. And that's it. How did it become a mitzvah deres? Because especially, you see everything, it says, the Monkrisus, the Ram says, that it'll become loss of love, okay. But the Ram in Pirush Mishnayis and Menachos says that even if it's lost, Nedar, you don't make other Shemen HaMishcha. So what does it mean that it's a mitzvah deres? Okay, that's the question. I think it's an interesting question. It's not, So, okay. Now, let me read to you Briskelov in the Shiur in Krisus and the Amid Aleph. Ubir hach dina dema dichsiv yiyeh ze li l'dorisechem ein hapirish di ach apostle v'tzor dafka ze she'asa Moshe. It's not the pshat that other Shemen HaMishcha is possible, and you need only the Shemen of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the only kosher Shemen HaMishcha. V'rak dadin hu bi'oiseh she'asa Moshe the calls man shu kayim she'iyu l'deres. I don't know what those words mean exactly. Umemela the acha loy mahani. Avo ein ze din mesuyim the sorch dafka asiyah shel Moshe v'ach apostle. The imam emes. You see, that's very strange. Now listen to this, and let's think about the Pirush Mishnah. This is an important line. The im be'emes yichle shel Moshe yehei tzorch la'asos acher. You see, the Rambam sounds like a stealer. Briskov says that if it's nichle, it's finished, then you have to make another shemen. And he says, Yetzorch la'asos shemen acher. V'rak the Kabbalah the kulo kayim b'nes. There's a Kabbalah that it's kayim. So I assume that when the Rambam says ne'edar, that it's lost, it's misplaced. But we know that it exists. So you have to find it. Darf the zuchen. So you can't make another one. But if you have the shemen and you used it up, you have to make another one. That's what he's saying. He's not referring to Mishnayos and Menachos, but that's the conclusion. Omnam b'chiyuv sicha. Okay, so he said, okay. So that is, so ki'ilu, so there's no kasha. There's the HaMitzvos l'deires, but there's avtocha the kula kayim. So if it's nedar, so you assume that it's there. You don't make another one. You have to find it. But if itaka is nichle, and you used it up, you have to make another one. So it's not a din you need dafka shel Moshe. But he said there are certain dinim that it's dafka shel Moshe. Omnam b'chiv sicha nire the al-azal or yisoch. There's a lav and a chiv kolis. Nire dehu din the ein chayovim kiim al shel Moshe. The whole field of Sikh with Shemen HaMishcha was only said not in Stam Shemen HaMishcha, but the Shemen HaMishcha of Moshe. V'loshen HaRambam, B'ilchos Klei HaMikdosh, V'ei Chayov Me'ala Sicha Shemen HaMishcha Shos Moshe. Shenema Mimenu, Mizeh, Shenema Boy, Shemen Mishchas Kodesh Yezeli. And on the Zeh, which was the Shemen HaMoshe, it says, Al the Lo Yisach, Al Zal Lo Yisach. The Chiyuv Sicha is a din. Since it's a Kabbalah, Shelo Yi'acher, Vuhu Yiyeh L'Deiros, it says L'Deiros Seichem, V'yiyeh Kayim L'Osel Lovoy. And this was said it did the al basar adam yisach. So look, that's the end of Biskarov. Okay. So look, what comes out from Biskarov is even though there's avtochas Hashem, shelo yichla Hashem in המשחה, shosa Moshe, but since there's a theoretical possibility that you could make other Shemen HaMishcha, the mitzvah is a mitzvah day. It's a very interesting thing. There's a Kabbalah that it will never happen, and there's a theoretical possibility that it, and on that, there's the mitzvah binyan mitzvahs. It's an amazing thing. Yeah, if I'd be in a joking mood, let's say a jovial mood, I would say in the Medrash, which the Rambam quotes twice in the once in the Akdama, and I think maybe also in the Shoshim, he quotes it once also. He says the kol eva ve'eva aseh b'mitzvah. So the eva, each person has ramach evolim, each wants to do a mitzvah. It's a very odd thing telling me to do a mitzvah when they will never tell me to do it. But okay, that's what it is. So it's the truth is, it's not worse than the Chovos Gavra, if you recall that the mitzvah of mechias of la'abed zayin amamin, and the Ram says even though kvar never zichom, but the mitzvah the Chovos Gavra is still kaim, even though mitzias there's nothing to do. It's not worse than that. And here there's a Chovos Gavra, but just mitzias there's nothing to do because it's kaim. Louis Yitzur, it wouldn't be a Louis Yitzur. He'd fight for zayin amamin. You have to kill him. And Louis Yitzur, if it was nichla, you have to make another shemen hamishcha. So the mitzvah days. So then someone could ask a question, so why by Sheni didn't they make new shemen hamishcha to make for the Kohen Gadol? Even whether the mitzvah is Mashiach or the mitzvah is Aseh. Why were they about the mitzvah? So I'm not sure how much of a question that is. Maybe, Geniza is certainly not worse than Ne'edar. And it wasn't Nichla.
Oh, so it's still there.
I guess so. I don't know. That's what I would assume. I'm just trying to show you. See, the important thing was this diuk in Rambam Pirush Mishnayos that he says Ne'edar, and the Biskrav and Krisis talks about Nichle. They're two different things. The Loshen Rambam, another question, which gets that I think you could answer. I'm not sure. The Rambam in Mishnah Torah is very similar to the Loshen Torah by Tzimtzenes Amon, because it says by Mon in Shmos Perek Tezayin Pasuk Lamed Gimel V'yomer Moshe el Aharon Kach Tzimtzenes Achas V'sen Shomo Moloi Oimer Mon V'hane Choyse V'nei Hashem L'mishmeres L'doirei Seichem. L'gabe shemen hamishcha, the Rambam writes in Luchas Klei HaMikdash Al Chabez, v'koch asu Moshe Rabbeinu b'midbar ubishel hakol alo eish ad she'avdu hamayim v'nisha hashemen v'inicho b'kli l'deiros. So what's the difference? So the it says the same thing, that if it's you have to take on the business, that's it's l'deiros, it's avtocha. But lu yitzur, that if it's nichle, the shemen hamishcha, you have to make other. In Mon, if the Mon is lost, not lost, is destroyed, doesn't exist, there's nothing else to make, nothing else to do. So I'm not sure how great these questions are, but it's just an interesting thing. The Biskarov, they say, what's the difference between the Shemen HaMishcha and that? the mon, but that's what's going on. It's a question of neder, and neder is one thing, but if it's nichle, you make other shemen hamishcha, and mon, there's nothing to do, there's no mitzvah. That noch was a nochelederes. It's true. In a noch maz noch, but if it would be nichle, you'd make another one. I guess so. Listen to this. Now I'm going to this question about mon being a mitzvah, not being a mitzvah, as opposed to there's no mitzvah mon, there's a mitzvah shemen hamishcha. Biskulov in it goes out to explain why there's a mitzvah of shemen hamishcha, is a mitzvah l'deires, and the Shiur increases on Hamid Bays. He says the name of his father, Reb Chaim. Da mitzvah hi lo niach eset sinsenes l'deires. V'loi sha mitzvah hi ma shehi yeshom l'deires. U'lechein have rak mitzvah sho'o. There's no mitzvah that it should be there, but it should put it there. And the putting is a temporal thing. He did it once and that's it. He should put it there, that should say l'deres. But there's no mitzvah that it should be l'deres. But in shemen hamishcha, the mitzvah he, she shemen hamishcha zeh l'deres. Okay, chavi mitzvah l'deres. Okay, so whatever that means, if what it means, what I said before, not, you have to decide yourself. I was telling you it could have been the same thing. But you can't, see, the question is, the mitzvah, for theoretical possibility, you can pasha the chovis gava to make it, okay? And it should be, okay? But in mon, there's no theoretical possibility. So what's the chovis gava l'deres? To make mon, to put mon there, even though it logically doesn't exist? It's everyone. I'm not sure how you'd formulate this, but there's nothing to do. Reb Chaim just says, he seems to say that mon, the difference between mon and shemen hamishcha is mon is the ma'aseh hanocha, and the shemen hamishcha is the mitzvah yiyeh. Okay, so I basically asked on that. Really, is the lashon of the Rambam Mishnah Torah seems to be the same lashon. So okay, Reb Chaim is like, I'm not sure if it's all necessary. That's all I was pointing out. Now the interesting thing is, the Biskarov goes a step further. After he quotes Reb Chaim, I think this is what's happening. I think he's saying his own shtickle afterwards. Biskarov adds, "Be'emes nira the b'shemen hamishcha ein mitzvah shiyeh shemen hamishcha." Rak mitzvah hi hachefsa the shemen hamishcha im kiyum dina dahainu hameshicha zoi mitzvah shemen hamishcha. So he's assuming that the meshicha is part of the mitzvah. This is certainly correct in the frame of reference of the Rambam in the Shloshim and the Min HaKotzer. That's foolish that the mitzvah is Mashiach. But what the Biskarov is doing is going further and saying that the Pshat in the Rambam in Mishnah Torah and in Sefer HaMitzvos, when Sefer HaMitzvos says each divor sheyeh lonu shemen Aseh al maskunas hamiyuchedes muchal l'mshoach boy, it doesn't mean that it should be there for a purpose. It means you should do Mashiach with it. And in Mishnah Torah, we interpret it like that also. When the Ram says in Perek Aleph Mitzvah say, "La'aseh shemen ha'mishcha sheyeh muchal l'dvorim shetzrichen Mashiach boy," it means you do that the Mashiach is part of the mitzvah. But l'chera, that is a sofa. There's no hechach in that because it could be that the mitzvah is only sheyeh, and that's what you do with it. And Muchan v'chulei is the explanation of what the Aseh is. And the Prater mitzvahs, the Ram just says that the mitzvah is Aseh. He doesn't say anything else. He doesn't say anything about Mashiach. But this, the Briskerov clearly works like that. And Reb Chaim, he never said it. And the question is just the question of interpretation, which we discussed before in the last Shiur. What does it mean? Is he telling you what it's used for, or is he telling you the mitzvah is Mashiach? However, in Shroshim and in the Minyan HaKotz, it's very clear the mitzvah is Mashiach. Now, let me read you the following to you. The Sefer Chinuch, a mitzvah Kuf Zayin, on the mitzvah of Shemen HaMishcha, the Chinuch writes the following: Laseis Shemen HaMishcha alo inyan shetziv sa'atera laseisai shenema v'yosisai say Shemen Mishchas Kodesh sheyiyeh muchon l'mshoach boy v'gam. Listen to this. So till now, it's basically Peter the Rambam. He's saying over the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvos and Mishnah Torah Muchan. V'gam mi'yesod HaMitzvah, from the foundations of the mitzvah, liyos muchon b'bayis le'es hatzorach l'maylis hamokim, that the Mokkah Mikdash, the Ma'ila Mokkah Mikdash, requires that the Shemen HaMishcha should be there. V'gam mi'yesod HaMitzvah liyosei muchon b'bayis le'es hatzorach l'maylis hamokim ki yodu al derech moshel ki mimaylis bal habayis hanichbad liyos muchon b'bayis kol hatzorach bo. All those things which are necessary for a house, if it's well equipped, all the equipment should be there. If it's a properly equipped house. V'loi tisakev shom melocha ad heich hatzorach eleh. Until something is brought, it has to be brought. It's not there. So I assume, not sure, I assume we're talking about the Kohen Gadol, because the Kohen Gadol is the tzorach of the bayis, and every Kohen Gadol requires Mashiach. So you need a Shemen HaMishcha there, in the order that there should be avodah. L'cheira, the Mashiach's melech doesn't have to do with Mikdash. It's not a tzorach l'bayis. Next, v'noheges bisman habayis. This mitzvah is noheges bisman habayis. V'hi mi mitzvahs hamutolos al hatzibur, k'mo binyan habayis v'keleho. Even though the lashon of the chinuch is similar to the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos, and in Mishnah Torah in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, the Sofer, there's a new chelik of the mitzvah, Shemen has to be mikdash muchal the Mashiach, is a chiddush. This, you find this idea, you'll find it also in the Ibn Ezra, in the Pirush Aruch, in Shmos, Perek Lamed Hey, Posik Tesvav, in Pashas Vayakov. Listen to this. I remember I discovered this. So over 40 years ago, when I discovered this. Ukli, listen to the Lashon. It's not in the middle of nowhere. Ukli shemen hamishcha, ukteres hasamim, yiyu nechoinim, ki hein kodesh, bein haporeches, v'amosach pesach hamishkon. So the mokom of shemen hamishcha is in kodesh. Okay. So, just first of all, okay, good. That's what he says it is. So then, that the shemen has to be fnei Aron is an aside. L'chayr that k'mo in Yuma, the shemen fnei Aron is a separate says the Kosev and Geniza. The Yegoyne is the Agashor Plishtim, Yegoyne is the Mata Aron with the Aron, and Yegoyne is the Shemen HaMishcha with the Aron. But it's not that the Mekayimai is b'fnei Aron. However, there is enough kamina here. This has nothing to do with anything, but I'm sure it's certainly of interest. However, you could say that it's not a lochin geniza, and that the mokim of the Shemen HaMishcha should be b'fnei Aron. So not didn't mikdash, it should be b'fnei Aron. So the nafkamina is, what would be if the Aron was in one place and the Mishkan or the Mikdash was another place? Tahainu in Neve Givon, where the Aron was in Ir David, and the Shemen HaMishcha, or not, and Kodesh, or whatever it is, was in a different place. So where was the Shemen HaMishcha? Okay. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it says by the Mashiach of Shlomo Melech that it said that he Nosson, I think it was Nosson, took the shemen min ha'oil. Okay. So where was it? Which oil? So if you look in the Ibn Ezra, l'shitosai, in Pashas Kisisa, he says that when he's talking about Shemen HaMishcha there, he says it was from the oil, it was from the oil moed or something like that, if you look there, okay? And that's the Shitasai, that it's Mokum is Kodesh, and it's only din in Geniza. But Rashi Malachim says he took it from Ir David, because the din of B'fnei Ha'aron is not a din in Geniza, that's Mokum in general. Whatever it is, that's the Ibn Ezra, that it's B'mokum Kodesh, and the Chinuch says that it doesn't say where it is in the bias, but it's a din in the bias. And the Chinuch is, someone could have asked the Chinuch, why isn't Shemen HaMishcha part of the mitzvah of Mikdash? If it's a din of a tzorach bias, you need the bias. Maybe the Shemen should have been a thing as part of the mitzvah binyan HaMikdash. So we don't know. But that's the story. Okay? Okay? That's the end of mitzvah Shemen HaMishcha. I thought that last thing, the machlokes, we have no idea what the Rambam Shita anyway, where the Shem doesn't mention anything about Mikdash. We don't know anything in Rambam about where it was. We know, all we do know in the Rambam says that there was Geniza of the Shemen HaMishcha, and he quotes the Geniza in Perek Dalet Beis HaBechira, Aloch Aleph. We don't know if that's a general din or what the din was. We don't know anything in Rambam. In Rashi, Melachim we know, and the Ibn Ezra we know, but the interesting is the Chinuch, we don't know that much about what he's saying also. Okay, Beseder. So that's the end of this. Next, let's go back to the mitzvah of Olim. Whatever we could do here. Mitzvah Lamed Daled, mitzvah Arba Ushloishim, He shetzivonu sheyisuu hakohanim ha'aron al kitfeihem kishenirtze loseis mimokum lemokum. So just nothing, just an aside. I didn't mention it, talk about the Chutz portion. The mitzvah is not to carry the Aron. The mitzvah is when we want to move the Aron to a different place, it should be done on shoulders. That's what he says. He says, Sheyisra kohanim ha'aron al kitfeim kishenitza loseisoi. When you want to take it, latika, you want to take it, you want to take it. But the mitzvah is not to take it. The mitzvah, when we want to take it, it should be al kitfeim. The mitzvah is how it should be moved, but not the moving itself. Okay, next. That's just a simple point, but I think it's correct. Now, let's start slowly. Now, it's clear here that the mitzvah is only on the Nasi of the Aron. And there's no mitzvah on Shakra and Mikdash. She Yisra Kohanim ha'aron al kitfeim. And the mitzvah is on Aron and on Kohanim. That is l'chera what it says. there are two questions which, let's say, Bakei v'oile mitoicho inyan. Why does the Rambam say that the mitzvah is only on the Aron? In Midbar, the mitzvah was on Kol Klisharis. Kol Masa B'nei Kos, Shekoil HaMenorah v'Ashulchan v'Mizbachos b'Shah Klisharis. So l'cheira, the mitzvah, the deiris, should also be everything and shouldn't include the Aron B'dafka. In Bamidbar, Levim were nitztavu on the Siyas Aron. The deiris, the mitzvah is on Kohanim. The Ram says this later very clearly. A priori, this is against the Ikri Adas. You say this Adas, I think it's Shi, Shoito Muchlefes, you say Rabitul, then nothing rebuttal, there'll be no change in Torah. L'chayr is the change in Torah. Originally the mitzvah was on Kohanim, Levim, and now it's on Kohanim. In fact, the Ramban asked this kasha, and it's Asogis. The Rambam Mishnah Torah doesn't mention that when it's Kohanim, Levi doesn't mention anything. The Rambam Perek Beis, Haluchas Klei HaMikdash, Halacha Yud Beis, Beis Shemolichin Es Ha'oloi Mimokum L'mokum, Ein Molichin Oisai Lo Ala Behemo, Vo Ha'agolos, El Mitzvah L'noit Loi Ala Kotef. So again, that's true. The mitzvah is kotef where you take the mimokum l'mokum, but he doesn't say who does it. He doesn't say that the mitzvah is only on Kohanim. But he works with what's going on over here, that the mitzvah is only on Aron, not on Shaklei HaMikdash. Okay, that's just just to get our bearing straight of what happened here. Here is a very important thing, because one would have assumed, just to the side, I don't make a big deal about this, but if the Seder Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos has some rhyme and reason, the Rambam puts this mitzvah in the middle of the mitzvahs which are about Beis HaMikdash. So l'chveira, if there is rhyme and reason, one should assume and work with it, the working assumption that the Aron is an integral part of the Beis HaMikdash. And that's the impression you get in Moreh Nevuchim. In Chelek Gimel, Perek Mem Hey, V'tzivonu anachnu she'ivno heichal l'shmoi yis'aleh v'nosim boi ha'aron she'esh boi shnei luchos avonim shebohen onochi v'lo yihye lecha. So it seems like it's an integral part of the bias. However, if you remember, the Amnuchos Beis Bechira, certainly in the newer editions, it's more based on the Ksakis Vayad, not on the old Fus. It says Viris Mabayis Kalim, Shiva Kalim, not Kalim, Shiva Kalim. And always not mentioned there. And the Rav has a whole shtickle that Orin is not necessarily part of the, it's not part of the mitzvahs binyan Beis HaMikdash, or Beis Bechir, whatever. So here, that's not that's neither here and there. I'm not interested in that. I'm just pointing out the Owen seems to have an integral part over here, certainly in Sefer HaMitzvos, if the Seder is important, and explicitly in Moreh Nevuchim. The word over here, it says Shiyisu, right? And then it says Kishinitza l'seisai. It means to carry, okay? Correct?
Yeah.
In the original Arabic, the word, if you translate exactly, is more about movement. Havara hazaza. Ibn Tibbon has translated Shiyisu probably based on the pasuk, Bakotef Yisol, but the Arabic doesn't support it. Okay, next. That's just an aside. I mean, I don't know how important that is. Now, we mentioned that the Rambam in Mishnah Torah, here he mentions very clearly that it's Kohanim. In Mishnah Torah, he doesn't mention it. And also in Mina Mitzvah Kotze, he doesn't mention it. In Mina Mitzvah Kotze, he says, Loses ha'aron ala הכתף כשנושאין oisei ala oisei shenem b'kotef yisol. So, derech agav, in terms of Yisu, the Ibn Tibbon, it's not only the pasuk, it's the Ram in Sefer in Mishnah Torah, or in the Minyan HaKotzer, clearly says Yisol. Sometimes Ibn Tibbon modifies the translation using other sources of the Rambam, even though the Arabic might not support it. And the Chayr is an example. Yisu, and he says that's what it is. Both in Mina Kotzer and in
Shatar.
I was very careful. I said in Mina Kotzer because the Mishnah Torah says Be'eshe Molichim Esa Orim Mimokal Lemokal. In Mina Kotzer he says Yisu Shenoisin Loses Esa Orim Al Kotef Shenoisin Oisei Al Kotef. Second. in the Protei HaMitzvos, Losseis ha'aron ala הכתף. So the Protei HaMitzvos also. Not sure how important that is, but sometimes sometimes he does that. Okay. He does in Mishnah Torah mention the word nosu, yisu, as a rejoinder. Ulefi sheshochach in Perek Beis, halacha yud beis, ulefi sheshochach David, v'nosoi al ho'agola, nifratz peretz beuza. El mitzvah lenotloi al hakotef, ki shnema ki avodas hakodesh aleim b'kotef yisohu. So you get the impression, and really that's really important, in no other place does the Rambam mention this issue of Kohanim. It's only here, in Mina Kotzer, in Protei HaMitzvos, and Mishnah Torah, he doesn't mention it. Now, in Mishnah Torah, besides the fact that the Ram doesn't mention there was a change in the mitzvah, but the mitzvah is Lisa Owen al Kotef without saying whether it's Kohanim or Levim or what it is exactly, is in Perek Beis, Halacha Yud Beis, in Klei HaMikdash. Ve'eshim alichin es ha'orin, mimokol lemokol, ve'im alichin ha'isai, lo ha'beheimo v'lo ha'agola. Ela mitzvah l'not lo ha'kotef, shnemo ki avodas ha'kodesh aleim b'kotef yisol. Ochein, b'midbo, it is true that the Levim did it, and they were appointed for the mitzvah. Maybe there was an ashala that other people shouldn't do it. And maybe it's because at that point, part of avodas b'nei kosel, the part of avodas alvim, was the Maser Mishkan. And there was no Nesias owned by it, so we'll see about that. So I'm not sure about this. I'm going to say something, and I think that it has to be thought about. See, the question is how serious this is. There's a pasuk. I read it, okay. There's a pasuk in Tanakh. Vayishlach ha'om Shiloi Vayisu mishom es aroin habris Hashem tzvokois Yeshiv akruvim Vayishlach ha'om Shilo Vayisu mishom es aroin bris Hashem tzvokois Yeshiv akruvim V'shom shnei b'nei Eli Im aroin bris ho'elokim Chofni u'pinchos Shmuel Aleph Perek Dalet Posik Dalet. And another posik in Shmuel Aleph Perek Zayin Posik Aleph Vayavo Anshe Kiryas Yorim ויעלו es הארון Hashem, ויבואו אל בית אבינודב בגיבו, ויס אלעזר בנו קידשו לשמו es הארון Hashem. And it doesn't mention that it was Levim, Kohanim, could have been Yisrael Ches. But it is clear that in Loiv Mekoimos, it's the Masa was Kohanim and Levim, and one could say that maybe both of these cases, it's not clear who did it, and it was Yisrael, maybe Shloik Halacha. There was no tzivui, it just said they came and they did it. We don't know anything. I'm not sure you can make a big deal out of these psukim. Maybe it's or maybe that they used Kohanim or Levim was maybe it's not a din. Maybe it's covered on that there is an inyan to mechaber the Aron, as Ram says in Mishnah Torah in Hilchos Sefer Torah Perek Yud Halacha Yud, mitzvah liyached l'Sefer Torah mokoim ulechabdoi ulahadroi yosemidai. I think it continues. Dvorim shebeluchos hein shebechol sefer v'sefer. Oder the mitzvah lechabdoi lahadroi is because every sefer Torah contains the Aseh Adivos. In the Machayev is the Aseh Adivos, not the Sefer Torah. The state in Ramam. Dvorim, I think they're from Namil Loshem. Maybe I'm off. Dvorim shebeluchos hein shebechol sefer v'sefer. Now, Tesefta in Soita, Perek Zayin Halacha Yudches, Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish Oimer, Shnei Aronos Hoyu, Echot Shiotzi Mohen Lemilchamo, V'echot Sheshori Mohen B'machane. Sheyetze imohen lamilchama hoye boy Sefer Torah shnei maroim bris Hashem noisei lifneim. V'zeh sheshorui imohen b'machne zeh shehoye boy luchos v'shivei luchos. Shnei v'Aaron bris Hashem u'Moshe leMoshe mikol ha'machne. So here it's an amazing thing. We'll see about this later. You see, I'm not sure if the Aron would say for what the Mechayim, what the Dinim are, and the Mas, we don't know anything. If it's Din that has to be Bekotef, if it's an Aron, Rashi talks about an Aron with Shivei Luchos. Here, the Deceptor seems to say that everything, the Luchos and the Shivei Luchos were in the other Aron. So I'm not sure if this Aron that went out to Muhammad is really meaningful, according to this. The Rav and Briskerov, when they talk about this, they talk about no Kil Dinim in it. My Rebbe in Hilchos Gram Vagil, Hilchos Klei HaMikdash, and the Briskerov. You see from that, there's a Kiyu Masa on. even without Mishkan, because the second Aron has nothing at all to do with Mishkan. Now, interesting, the mitzvah of Aseh HaArон is not found in the Bahag, which we'll talk about in Hashem. It's Bli Neder at some time. And it's not found in the Sefer mitzvah of Sadigoin. But he has an Aseh of Asoros Abadim, but there's no mitzvah of Masa. Okay, that's okay. Okay. Next thing will be a longer discussion. Let's Amit Hashem pick up next week. There's a lot to do here. And you know, you can whet your appetite, you can read the letter to Rav as a piece in the Grav Grid, and Briskov as a letter to him. Interesting, this, even though it was the Grav, Stama was a letter to Briskov. It doesn't say Chazisi le'akire. You look at different Lashonis over there, and I'll just tell you, as Ladavoini, when I was learning, I was with Lichtenstein. We were learning together the Rav, Shlishi and Ramasa Oren. The Rav wanted to discuss the letter that he had, the letter from the uncle, and we. I remember Yitzchak went out to the base medrash in the third floor to go and find the Sefer of Briskov. We couldn't find it, and we never ended up discussing it with the Rav. Shabbat Tzlocha, have a nice week.
Okay. אותו.